Okay, so let's take a look at completing the square. Going from in the notes, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. From standard form to vertex form, y equals a open bracket x minus p close bracket squared plus q. Now, p and q are sometimes h and k. Either way, the vertex is v colon, opposite of the inside of the bracket, so it has a negative p on the inside, so the opposite is p, and the same as you see on the outside, the vertex is pq. So we're going to go back and forth between these different forms for reasons. You might want the vertex, you might like a form, whichever. So this chapter we're focusing more on vertex form, and next chapter we're going to go back to standard and learn how to find x-intercepts from that form. So let's take a look at the first example. Y equals x squared plus 6x plus c. And that is in standard form. And we want to convert it to vertex form. So we need to figure out a number that we can replace for c, that it will factor well, and it will eventually look like this. To be in vertex form with something being squared. And in order to do that, we're going to take our b value, we're going to divide it by 2 and square it. Now our b value is 6, b equals 6. Notice in the notes I go to the right because I don't have enough space. I'm going to go down. My b value is 6, put it in for b, still squared. 3, still squared, is 9. Now, this is our c value. So I can put it in for c. Y equals x squared plus 6x plus 9. The 9 we just figured out a second ago. Substituting for c using the process b over 2 all squared. Let's put a box around that formula. We're going to use that formula a bunch. Now we have to factor it from last year. Review factoring. Factoring trinomials when a is equal to 1. Two numbers that multiply to get 9 and add to get 6 are 3 and 3. So x plus 3, x plus 3, y equals. And then instead of having x plus 3, we can just call it x plus 3 all squared. Now, the reason why we did all this process off to the right, b over 2 all squared, and substituted the b carefully, and 6 divided by 2 carefully, is because this number is always that number. And we can graph it off to the right. We know where the parabola x squared is from all of our notes. And we know that we have a plus 3 on the inside of the brackets, which means that we're going to be going left 3. Excuse me. We need to move this x-axis over. Erase the x-axis. Sorry, we need to move the y-axis over. Erase the y-axis. Put it further to the right. Excuse me, I erased it. Okay, further to the right. Because we've got to take x squared, we know it usually is, move it left 3. So it's usually at 0, 0. Left 3 is there. Then our pattern away from the vertex. 1 squared is 1, up 1. 2 squared is 4, up 4. Draw symmetrical points. Draw a parabola through it. And that's our equation. Y equals x plus 3, brackets around it, squared. The graph of x squared moved left 3, going successfully from the top big blue standard to vertex, and real life example standard to vertex. Now you may be saying, where's the q value? Well, there's a plus 0 over here. And if we know that the vertex, back to black, down below, v colon, is open bracket opposite of inside the brackets. There's a positive 3 inside the brackets, so it's negative 3 colon, same as the outside. Sometimes it's useful to write that plus 0 off to the right so you can clearly see what your vertex is on the other graph. The graph of x squared moved left 3, successfully going from vertex form, standard form into vertex form, solving for a c value. Okay, so now we're going to do the same process, going from standard to vertex. Remember that graph's off now. So let's take this new question. Y equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. Let's identify that a is equal to 1. The number to the left of the x squared is 1. Either way, following the notes, I rewrote it into the step. Just look at it. Brackets around the first two things, called grouping the x terms. Now we're going to do the same process that we did above. B over 2, brackets around it squared. The B value from last year is negative 4. Negative 4 over 2, brackets around it squared. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, brackets around it squared, and equal to positive 4. Now I'm going to take that 4, and I'm going to add it and subtract it inside the brackets right here. Y equals x squared minus 4, exactly as it was above. Then, plus 4 and minus 4. The number that we just figured out, add and subtract it. Excuse me, that's a terrible arrow and the wrong, whatever. Add it and subtract it inside the brackets. Just like you see here. Then carry everything else down. Plus 3. Now, because A was 1, again, A is 1, we can scribble out that bracket and put it here. Ha! Now, why wouldn't you just told me to put it on the inside to add it and subtract it on the outside? Well, reasons. So I'm going to rewrite it as is, but in the future you get to skip this step. Moving the bracket in 1. Now we're going to factor the brackets. What are two numbers that multiply to get 4 and add to get negative 4? Negative 2 and negative 2. X minus 2, x minus 2. Factoring the brackets. Off to the right, negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. Bring down the y equals. Call it a squared term. Now it's in vertex form. Y equals x minus p close bracket squared plus q. Where the vertex, v colon, off to the left, is open bracket opposite of inside the brackets. Same as outside of the brackets, 2, negative 1. Let's draw a graph and put that on the graph. 2, negative 1, label it 2, negative 1. Now, do you want to draw a table of values? No. Look at the vertex. Remember that A is 1. So we just have the pattern of x squared. So 1 squared is 1 times 1 is 1. Excuse me. 1 squared is 1, up 1. 2 squared is 4, up 4. Symmetrical points, let's put them in black. Symmetrical points. Symmetrical points. Parabola, million steps. And notice, it was the parabola, right 2 and down 1. Find the vertex. So that's successfully changing from standard form into vertex form. Using the formula that I boxed above, b over 2 all squared. Don't get in the way of your stuff. Okay, so we just did a equals 1. What do you think we're going to do now? A is not equal to 1. Box around it. So let's do y equals 2x squared minus 8x plus 3. Okay, the first step is the same step as above. Brackets around the first two things. But this time, as you can see in the notes, I've written exactly the same instructions above and exactly the same instructions down below, and I've changed the instructions down below to be in red. We have to factor out the coefficient of x squared, not the greatest common factor of the brackets, but the coefficient of x squared. So we have to factor out a 2. So y equals 2 open bracket. Now, you might have to factor out something else, like a half. Or a negative, and go back to grade 10 and fully understand how to remove a greatest common factor. But either way, whatever the coefficient of x squared is, we have to take that out. So 2 times what above is 2x squared, x squared. 2 times what is negative 8x? Well, it's going to be negative 4x. Because 2 times negative 4x is negative 8x above. Again, review your greatest common factors from grade 10. What if you pull out a half? There's another fraction on the inside. Go back and review. Okay, so close bracket plus 3. Now off to the right, let's do our process. B over 2, brackets around it squared. Now we're going to use the new b value. the new coefficient of the x value, the negative 4, negative 4. Coincidence, it's the same as above, whatever. Divided by 2, substituting in the formula, we get negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Squared is 4. Awesome. So, again, I do that process. I forgot to mention it again. But I'm going to circle that negative 2. And you're going to notice that that's the number that's inside the brackets eventually factored. And if we look above, when we got that negative 2, that was the number that goes inside the brackets when it's factored. And we do harder problems. This is going to be a lot better. Okay, bottom right, I'm just going to correct that negative 2 inside the brackets lightly. Whoops, I lost a bracket and a red circle. Negative 2 inside the brackets. It's not wrong. I just accidentally circled part of it. Whatever, that number's going to come in later. So we got 4. And what did we learn? Well, we have to add and subtract that number inside the brackets like we did above. So we're going to add and we're going to do that. Y equals 2 open bracket, x squared minus 4x, exactly as it was above. Then we're going to add the number that we just figured out and subtract the number. We can't change anything. Excuse me, minus 4. And then put the plus 3 off to the right. Now, we can't just scribble off that negative and move it. Because this negative 4 is supposed to be times by that, when we remove it, we have to times by the a value 2. So above that red arrow, times 2. A lot cleaner in the notes. So let's take that negative 4 outside of the brackets and rewrite it. Y equals 2 x squared minus 4x plus 4, close. Now we take the negative 4 out, we have to multiply it by 2. So it'll be negative 8. Carry everything else down, plus 3. Now let's factor the brackets. So it's identical to the question above. Let's just do it quick. Y equals 2x plus 2, x minus 2 times x minus 2. Now remember, we already did this above, and we wrote down the long form. But why don't we just square it and say negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. Vertex form. Circle your answer. I forgot to circle my answer above. Vertex form. Circle your answer. Vertex. Opposite of what's inside the brackets. Inside the brackets is a negative 2 above. That's positive 2. 2 comma. Same as the number outside of the brackets. Negative 5 outside of the brackets. Negative 5. And then, obviously, draw your graph. The vertex is at 2, negative 5. Oh, I have to scroll up a bit. 2, negative 5. And look at this. Big blue. We know that we have a 2 in front. Or we know that we have a 2 in front. So we're going to do the 2 pattern. But what if it's a 3 or a negative a half or a whatever? You have to learn how to do a table of values in your head. We're going to do the 2x squared pattern. 1 squared is 1. Times 2 is 2. Over 1 up 2. Symmetrical point. 2 squared is 4. Times 2 is 8. Over 2 up 8. Which will be here and here. Symmetrical point. Parabola through it. Much better seen in the notes. So that's completing the square. Converting from general standard to vertex form. We have both forms. We're going to review the forms on the review sheet as well. You're going to have to go back and forth between the forms, whichever one you want. And don't forget the careful steps. B over 2, all squared. Forgot to box it the last time. All 3, big blue. Used it 3 times. Remember, all this stuff is perfect in the notes. So if you were writing all this stuff down, good for you. Or just look at the notes and highlight it if you'd rather go quicker. Turn on the speed to double speed. Whatever. Great. Okay, so that's completing the square. Let's now find the vertex differently. Let's find vertex form differently than converting.